Welcome to the greatest morning show in the history of morning shows. And as you all can hear, my mic sounds perfectly fine. I think I figured out what the issue is. Again, it's going to take a lot of manual control, but I'm going to get it right. This is the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. We will be the best damn morning show on the internet that's up this early in the morning. I hope you guys are doing okay. Yes, I am still in another suit. I am in another suit because I am determined to get this right. And I want to be in a suit, best wear, when I actually get it right. I hope you guys are doing okay this morning. Can you all hear me okay? I went through extensive testing. With this to make sure that it sounded okay. So I'm going to get the accolades to the audience before moving forward and proceeding. If I can get this up right. 1 second. There we are. All right, guys. How are you doing this morning? Can you hear me? Looking good. Thank you. Thank you. How's the sound? Sound okay? Sounds good. Excellent. 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 Excellent on all fronts. I have a damn good show for you today. Damn good. When I say damn good, I mean damn good. I'm not hedging at all on this. There's a bit of news that is taking place. Of course, the BRICS summit is going on. But in the United States, there's a bit of panic. At least that's the way it seems to me, anyway, from this point of view. The Democratic Party seems to be understanding that Kamala Harris has started to trail off against Trump. And because they've seemed to accommodate this, we only have about 2 weeks for the election to take place. All sorts of hysteria is coming out of the Democratic Party right now. It is bizarre. You have the situation where John Kelly is saying that Trump apparently said that Hitler had some good ideas and he wishes the generals were more like Hitler. Kamala Harris goes out and amplifies that. Joe Biden claims that he wants Donald Trump locked up. I mean, just to give you a taste of this. So this is Joe Biden. Joe Biden went out and claimed that Trump was trying to kill people.
It's not a joke. This is a guy who also wants to replace every civil servant, every single one. Thinks he has a right under the Supreme Court ruling on immunity to be able, if need be, if it was the case, to actually physically eliminate, shoot, kill someone who he believes to be a threat to him. I mean, so I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like I said this 5 years ago, he locked me up. We gotta lock him up. Politically lock him up.
Now, to be clear, Joe Biden is making the argument that Donald Trump needs to be locked up. That is the argument that he is pushing out. And again, I don't even know if Biden is the most extreme one that's having this conversation. I mean, again, talking about the Hitler thing, there was a conversation that was taking place with the Atlantic that he denigrated that, what was the special private or something like that was in the military, Vanessa Gullin, I believe, with her family coming out saying that's not true, don't use her name for this kind of political nonsense. There has been a heavy level of hysteria. It has been astonishing. On the other side of it, Kamala Harris has been doing interviews. Now, Donald Trump is supposed to be going on Joe Rogan. I believe that's going to take place today. And I don't know how long he's going to stay on Joe Rogan. Usually those shows go for like 3 hours, but he's going to do it. Kamala Harris was offered a gig on Joe Rogan. She said no. Now, the CNN interview that Kamala Harris did, she is not a good interviewer. And part of it is because some of the questions that they ask her are somewhat difficult to answer, and she doesn't necessarily do well in giving non-answers. She kind of wanders. In fact, the commentary that CNN came out with was one of the Republicans said, I would pay her money. In fact, right here. He said, I would pay her to do another hour of that. Let me see if I can find a clip right here.
I think the things that are troubling were her responses to, Van said about what you're going to do to reduce costs when they asked her at the beginning. We're hurting economically. She said, I'm going to prosecute corporations. Right? That's not going to lower costs. Oh. How are you going to make things better for me? I'm going to prosecute people. Trump bad is not a message that's going to get her elected. Trump bad message. I disagree with. Republicans would take another hour of Kamala Harris.
He said we take another hour of Kamala Harris doing a town hall like that. And I got clips from the town hall. I mean, some of the answers are disastrous. At least I would consider disastrous. And some of them are frankly aggravating, especially on the issue of Gaza. Kamala Harris has a way of just not answering the question. And it's not like she doesn't answer it and you come away with it thinking you got something, you didn't get anything out of it. You come away with it knowing that she did not answer the question. Axelrod, once her elected, Axelrod said when she doesn't answer, she goes into these word salads. I mean, sometimes these word salads take minutes in order to go through. It is super bizarre. But again, Kamala Harris is doing this because Kamala Harris believes she needs to do this. Meaning, this is not a situation that she would do under normal circumstances if she didn't have to. It's happening because she feels she needs to. It is a weird place for her to be in. And looking at the polling, you can see somewhat of a slide. And you can imagine that if you are in an election, you have about 2 weeks to go, and you see a slide in the polling, you have to, on some level, inquire as to why. And you're going to have to somehow correct the ship. And the only way you can correct the ship is going out to the American audience and talking to the American audience. But what happens and what do you do when the more you talk, the worse it gets? Because you're effectively saying the exact same thing. My argument as to why runs in a few counts. In one sense, it's the Gaza issue. There's that. By being mealy-mouthed, you split the vote. You don't get the bang for the buck because you don't necessarily have a coherent strategy. You're just doing the same thing that Joe Biden did. The other part to that is Kamala Harris does not have a movement. She does not have a thematic purpose of being in the race. Obama wanted health care. He was the first black president. Bernie Sanders wanted Medicare for all. He wanted the $15 an hour minimum wage. I have no idea what Kamala Harris wants in real terms. And I would imagine the American public don't either. There was this pop of newness. She's black. She's young. She's Asian in some way. She's a woman. This is new. This is different. This is something that we don't necessarily have. And with Joe Biden failing before our very eyes, just withering away before our very eyes, she was a new norm. And that new norm was able to bring a certain level of energy into the party, into the context of the election. Okay. What happens, though, when that public that was going to vote against Joe Biden in a landslide realize that you are effectively Joe Biden? Meaning, when you tell the public, I'm not going to do anything different. I can't think of anything that I would have done different if I was in that office. What is the perception that you give to those people? Yeah, it may be change on the outside, but what you're telling them is that it's continuity on the inside. And when the 60 to 80% of the public says the country is going in the wrong direction, and the guy who was at the helm of it while it was going in the wrong direction was Joe Biden, and you can't distinguish yourself from that same guy, Joe Biden, that was going to get taken out in the landslide, and your best answer is, well, clearly I'm not Joe Biden, clearly I'm not Trump, I'm a woman, I'm a new generation. That's not really an answer, though. She would have done far better off. In fact, it's not just that. For one, Joe Biden shouldn't have ran. He should have been the transitional candidate that he said he was going to be. Two, they should have had a primary in order to get the strongest candidate. Three, at the point where you're stuck with Kamala Harris, I understand that Kamala Harris is still in the service of Joe Biden. But the reality of it is she is running in a campaign. She needs to win. And it is far more important to hurt Joe Biden's feelings as opposed to lose the race. By clinging and sticking herself to Joe Biden, being unwilling to kind of make a real separation, even on the issue of Gaza or on some other issue, something that she wants to accomplish, it damages her. The glow and the honeymoon that she was able to get was not able to last, I would argue, for that specific reason. Not to mention she's very bad at interviews. It is not her best feature, to say the least. In fact, just to give you one of these, before we go and have to get Mark on the show, Harris is asked about, here's one. Harris is asked about the wall. All right. So Harris is asked about building the wall and Donald Trump's wanting to build a wall. Now, she uses this as an opportunity, of course, to hit Trump, because it seems that all of her arguments are basically, yeah, but Trump. But this doesn't necessarily go over well with Anderson Cooper. Let's listen to it.
Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw was about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward
to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on it? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense, because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
Of course, the point that Anderson Cooper is making there is you derided him for wanting to build the wall. You went after him for it. You thought it was stupid. And now you want to build the wall yourself. That's the point that he's making. And Anderson Cooper goes further into this, by the way, on issues of immigration. Hey, you guys took action on immigration 3 weeks before the debate. Okay, that's, why did you wait so long? Meaning, if you were able to stem the tide using executive orders 3 weeks before the debate, why did you allow so many people into the country in this kind of unrestrained way when you got into office? And of course, you really didn't have a good answer for that, because the truth of the answer is that when Biden got in, Trump was the devil, and they were doing any and everything in their power to repudiate Trump, including some of the things that actually worked. It's a fascinating interview. I'm going to have Ted Rall here at 8, and we're going to kind of go through some of the CNN clips and some of the other items that are on the menu. But I need to bring in Mark. And so I'm going to take a quick break. You listen to the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. Back in a moment. But, man, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you joining me. BRICS has come to an end at this point. What, if you had to put your finger on one of the main things that came out of this BRICS summit, what would it be? I mean, it was massive. I mean, 20,000 people, 30 different countries. Many of the countries that wanted to join were there. Give me a take on the thing that this, if there was 1, 2, or 3 things that were the main points that they left with, What was it?
Okay, so the first thing is the Western mainstream media grudgingly admitted that Putin isn't isolated. It took them this long, right? I mean, Putin's been jetting all over since 2022, despite the bull feces international criminal charges that he stole Ukrainian children by helping East Ukrainians move their own children in orphanages out of the range of Kiev regime artillery, which had been targeting them for 8 long years before Russia finally got their stuff together and intervened in the conflict. Despite that, Putin has been all over the place. He's even been to countries that are signatories to the International Criminal Court. By the way, Russia isn't the signatory. The U.S. isn't the signatory. Ukraine isn't the signatory, right? China isn't a signatory. Never mind that any questions of jurisdiction or anything like that. But he's been to Mongolia, and Mongolia is a member of the International Criminal Court, and Mongolia basically told the International Criminal Court and the ICC to go pound sand. What has happened there is the International Criminal Court has just lost all credibility. But he's been all over the place. All sorts of leaders have been to Russia now with 30-some state leaders, right? In Moscow, parading, shaking his hand, lighting up. Phenomenon that over the last 2 days, they almost as if they are receiving some type of cue, or they refuse to say the name BRICS. Right? This is just some kind of summit that Russia organized. Check the headline seriously. I mean, and I don't think that it's a simple instance that they believe that Western audience is so ill-informed that they don't know what BRICS is, right? Because they don't shy away from using ASEAN, right? The Southeast Asian nations in headlines, but BRICS they can't admit. It's just some summit that Putin called together just to try to present it as if he's not isolated. Well, self-evidently he's not isolated, and yes, there is an important multilateral institution, right? A giant elephant in the room that you're refusing to recognize what's going on because of what all of this means for the future. Basically, the formation of alternative institutions and platforms outside of the architecture of international finance and economics that the West controls, namely the IMF and the World Bank, now replaced by or paralleled by BRICS, New Development Bank, and more pointedly right now, what was probably the hottest thing in development for this BRICS is an alternative to SWIFT. And SWIFT, an acronym, is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. And it's basically how all global trade across borders is connected, right? It is the institution, the secure computers, the software by which banks exchange information, payments are made across borders. And Russia has been cut off from SWIFT since 2022, right? The West, which controls it, weaponized it. And the rest of the world recognized, as with Russia, that, hey, we need an alternative if the West is going to use this as a geopolitical tool. We need alternatives. And it was widely kind of hinted that the BRICS alternative to SWIFT would be announced during Kazan. And I believe that Putin wanted to have it finished and announced during Kazan, but apparently it wasn't finished. that the negotiations between the BRICS members on the details, at least, right, and everyone agrees in principle, but the details, it is more complex than it sounds, because it's each of the BRICS central banks agreeing basically to a network amongst them, and it didn't come to fruition. And I believe that was probably meant to be the big announcement of the Kazan BRICS. That didn't happen. So it was more a Putin is not isolated, and the denial that BRICS means anything. Those were really probably the two big takeaways that I have from this BRICS. Is, the Western mainstream meal grudgingly admitting that Putin isn't isolated, but refusing to acknowledge BRICS and the significance of it. Particularly now, since BRICS is a larger share of global GDP than the G7 itself is, right? The supposed top global 7 economies, at least at one time. That's because, the growth of China, the regeneration of Russia, the growth of India. But right now, the BRICS have 36 point something% of global GDP, and the G7 just cracks 30 now, right? In proportional share, they're decreasing. So that's significant. And the fact that BRICS represents 45% of the world's population on top of that. You can't deny these things when there is a common will. And the common will, it's an organization primarily for the moment about economics. And it's because the West has kept tight control of the levers of the architecture of global finance and trade economics, and they're not sharing, right? You have the rest of the world rising in economic strength, but they're still underrepresented in the decisions made at the World Bank, at the IMF, in the frozen World Trade Organization. So everyone wants options, right? They want a fairer system of economic global governance, and BRICS in that way represents not just an alternative for that, but because everything else flows from trade and money, right? It is also the framework for a parallel new, of course, the word new world order is bad framing, right? But a parallel world order to the rules-based order, quote unquote. We make the rules, we give the orders that the U.S. likes to tout about.
Yeah, it seemed that everybody was clamoring to get involved in this. There was something that Putin said that kind of gave me, I don't know, I guess a certain level of context. They asked him what was the difference between BRICS and the EU. And he goes into this thing saying, well, we're an organization of cooperation. This is based on our mutual interests. This is not in a situation of like laws and order and everything else that have been created to wed us together. That is not what this is. And despite the fact that, as you pointed out, 46% of the world's globe, it is a young organization. And what it's trying to do is pretty expansive. I mean, it's effectively trying to create a new, well, you articulated it extremely well, but this allows a certain level of hope for all of these other countries that feel either locked out or talked down to. Meaning, I think a lot of this has to do with the dollar being used as a weapon and getting sick and tired of being, let's say, unequal in regards to the way that those international relations are done. In 15 years, what does this look like?
Okay, so first of all, the difference between the BRICS and the EU, right? They're both multilateral institutions. But quite obviously, the big difference between the two of them, there's three things: sovereignty, sovereignty, and sovereignty, right? The EU is a sovereignty and nation deconstruction machine, right? It is designed to take decision-making away from the national governments of the EU and move it to the Brussels technocrats, right? That is something that has progressed over the years. But if you look at how the EU started out in the post-World War II era as a Franco-German coal and steel community, a trade thing, and then has progressed over the time. But BRICS is founded on a completely different format. And it never seeks, and quite explicitly is never designed to have some type of central control. It is a format for agreement and cooperation between sovereign states on economic and potentially in the future geopolitical issues as well. So that's the big difference. In 15 years, well, that's a long time. So definitely, I think within another year or two, the SWIFT alternative will have been rolled out, right? So that will be long in the. Again, Putin wanted it this time, and in fact, I think you could say that there was less concrete achievement at this BRICS than the last BRICS, because at least in the last BRICS meeting, the new members, right? The SWIFT alternative.
There you are. Welcome back.
Yeah.
It's
So
okay.
this BRICS meeting did not have expansion, and it did not have any momentous achievements like I believe they wanted the SWIFT alternative to be announced at this BRICS. I think that the U.S. Successfully pulled off most likely some defections from BRICS. They applied pressure.
What do you mean? Who defected?
The president of Brazil did not show up, right? He says that he fell in his shower and he can't get up. And so he participated in the format by video, but I'm a cynic, so I question that official story, and I believe that the U.S. applied some pressure to him, and so he decided to ward off the U.S. Something that he has been doing this term, this
I know, but Lula, I don't get the sense that Lula is that guy. I mean, keep in mind, the U.S. was instrumental in putting the man in a cage, and he has been pretty aggressive on the issue of Palestine. He's been meaning he has been somewhat of a statesman on the world stage. I don't get the sense that he is a dandelion in that sense that would just kowtow to the U.S. But you don't buy that. You believe that. I mean, what leverage would they even have on Lula?
I think there's evidence that in this term, right, this presidency, not the last one, but that he has been much more cautious tiptoeing around the United States. And we know, for instance, that he outright vetoed Venezuela being brought into BRICS, right? That has been openly said by his own presidential advisor. He doesn't want Venezuela in BRICS. He said absolutely not Venezuela. And he has sided with the U.S. on the issue of Venezuela's recent elections, right? He essentially doesn't regard Maduro as fully legitimate for whatever reason. So the other one, of course, is Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia was offered an invitation to join BRICS last year, and everyone kind of thought they did. In fact, it was announced on Saudi TV that Saudi Arabia was officially a member of BRICS. But what legislative body Saudi Arabia has never ratified it. So Saudi Arabia has been kind of sitting on the fence, right, participating as a BRICS member without officially being a BRICS member. And Mohammed bin Salman not only chose not to go to this meeting, right, and this was with the the excuse that things are too hot in the Middle East, right? It's true, fair enough. But he also met with Antony Blinken while the BRICS summit was going on.
Yeah, that is true. Um, yeah, that is true. Look, at the Lula one, fair enough. The Bin Salman one, agreed on that one. Saudi Arabia is a bit cagey in this, and I thought that Saudi Arabia was a full-fledged member of BRICS also. So that comes, yeah, that comes as a bit of surprise to me. I'm super interested about Iran, right? So I would imagine that Putin is going to meet with Peskian at the summit. I would imagine they had the opportunity to talk. Exactly. The strategic partnership, is that going to be signed, or is Russia waiting to see the outcome of whatever Israel does and however Iran responds? Meaning, Russia does not necessarily want to get into a strategic partnership if it doesn't necessarily know um, what's going to happen in real terms. How is Israel going to attack? What is Iran's response going to be? What is going to be the rest of maybe even the U.S. response after that? Are they waiting for that to resolve itself before they do the strategic partnership?
Now, right? That's a fair question, right? So what we know, right, from that has been announced very quietly. So Russia and Iran were supposed to, announced months ago, sign the new, deeper, strengthened, comprehensive strategic partnership in October, right? That evidently is not going to happen now. Now, just over a week ago, Putin and the new Iranian president, Pezeshkian, met on the sidelines of a kind of obscure summit in Turkmenistan, in Ashgabat, right? And Putin evidently signing up for the summit at the last minute, just primarily so he could have a sit down on the sidelines with Pezeshkian. What TASS, the Russian state news agency, put out is that it was agreed that the strategic partnership agreement would not be signed on the sidelines of Kazan, but was of significant enough import that Pezeshkian will be coming to Moscow later this year to sign it in a bilateral format with all the bells and whistles and red carpet and everything. That is, to me, a legitimate presentation. However, there is certainly the nagging, has there been a delay because of the potential strike? Now, I do not believe that either before or now, in no way was there ever likely that there would be a mutual defense clause, right? Like there is in Russia's new treaty, a strategic partnership with North Korea, not with Iran, because Russia really does not want to be drawn into a major global, a Middle East confrontation that would blow up into a global confrontation. Russia doesn't need another one on top of the conflict in Ukraine. But there probably are significant details like sharing of intelligence, Russia's satellite data, which would be of immense help to Iran's long-range strike capability, air defense, the supply of S-400s. The Western media has hinted at that, possibly Russian electronic warfare as well. And there is also that supposedly Russia and Iran have inked a deal for the delivery of the Su-35s, Russia's stealth fighter, fifth-gen fighter. And supposedly they've already supplied the trainers, the Yak trainers, that Iranian pilots have begun training on them. So there's legitimate points that it could be a matter of purposeful delay, and it could be simply they want the appropriate pomp and circumstance. We'll have to, wait and see if we have anything firm on an answer. Both are credible, and we don't know at this point.
No, that's totally fair. The U.S. media is reporting that Russia, or that North Korea has sent troops into Russia. Now, John Kirby was out giving a statement basically saying this is an issue of weakness, and this shows that Russia is having difficulties in its war. What's the truth on this? I mean, this sounds very dodgy to me. I didn't necessarily give this too much credence. But what's the reality of it? And what's being reported there in Moscow is our North Korean troops in the battlefield.
No. In fact, it's become the most memeable event in Russia right now, at least before the summit. I mean, there was all kinds of ridiculous memes of pictures of Russians, of Lenin with Kim Jong-un and riding them, all sorts of ridiculous stuff. Now, this is a ridiculous concoction of the Kiev regime that they're trying essentially to claim that Russia, that North Korean troops are assisting Russia, therefore NATO should send its troops directly to fight Russia in Ukraine. That's it in a nutshell, right? Everything else is absolutely absurd. Are there some North Korean troops somewhere in the largest country in the world? Yeah, I'm quite sure there are some North Koreans involved in military training, exercises, perhaps undergoing, some of the Russian higher officer military schools, some language courses, working on interoperability. Are North Korean troops going to be used in the special military operation in Ukraine? Absolutely not. It's ridiculous. No one has suggested that Russia needs anyone else. They're signing up 30,000 new volunteer contract soldiers a month. It's not Russia that is forcibly conscripting people off the streets with press gangs knocking people unconscious, right? It's not the headlines, oh, Russia's front are collapsing because they don't have the manpower at this point, right? That's the Kiev regime. Russia does not need North Korean troops. It would obviously create a big international incident, right? Russia doesn't need that, right? They've got the majority of the world outside the rest on board, or playing quietly, neutral on the sidelines as they cheer privately as NATO is brought low, right, in Ukraine. They don't need North Korean troops. It's absurd. It is a bit of propaganda and theater. And if you look closely at the statements, right, they all refuse to actually say that these North Korean troops are anywhere near the special military operation, or there's no verification of this. And there's evidence presented online that shows soldiers of an Asiatic features, right, in Russian uniform. And the Kiev regime propaganda, these are North Korean soldiers in Russian uniform. First of all, that is the most racist thing in the world, as if all Asians look alike. But that is the nature of the Kiev regime. They have nothing but contempt for Asians, right? Much like Russian liberals. In fact, it is a feature of their propaganda, right? Their Banderite propaganda, that Russians are some type of Mongol horde that Ukraine is shielding Europe from, right? That's their whole Banderite fascist racist line. Russia is the largest country in the world. There are over 200 just indigenous ethnicities in Russia, and a lot of them don't look like white Europeans, right? The Buryats is one of the ones, evidently, is the Kiev regime's favorite. They look like Asians, right? Because Russia is actually, there's far more of Asian Russia than there is of European Russia, right? I mean, it's Siberia, the population, all right, is smaller out there. There's no question. But if you think all Russians look like, I don't know, me, right? You'd be wrong. Right? There are a whole host of ethnicities. And yes, all of those ethnicities, from the Tatars, right, in Kazan, which look slightly, you could say, Asiatic, if you're being that type of racist, all the way to the Buryats and the Chukchi and all, dozens and dozens of Russian ethnicities. So don't be fooled by the crude propaganda, and watch NATO and the U.S. both hedging their statements when they say it could be a problem if Russia used troops, North Korean troops in the SMO. It would be a big, but they don't say that they are. A game, and the West has started to go on with it a little bit, but everything is qualified to this whatsoever. It is another bit of Kiev regime fan fiction, a hoax, much like the Snake Island, FU Russia, and the Ghost of Kiev. That's the North Korean army. Yeah.
My favorite was always Russia blew up its own pipeline. That was always my favorite.
Don't forget Russia blew up its own Crimean bridge.
Yeah. Too. It's like Joe Biden got out there and said, if Russia goes in, the pipeline is going to stop. Then the Russians go in, pipeline blows up. And the U.S. media is like, man, this is very bizarre. This is a difficult puzzle to solve. And my thing was always, how did Joe Biden know? Was Joe Biden a psychic? Does he have psychics on staff? How does he know that the pipeline was going to blow up? It's like, come on. And by the way, that is not something that they even mention or talk about here. Like, they never talked about it in that sense of, okay, well, the U.S. had a vested interest in destroying the pipeline. The U.S. hated the fact that the pipeline was connecting Germany and Russia, and they wanted to sell that gas to them for 5 times more. Getting rid of the pipeline, something they complained about for years, was on the agenda. Well, we don't talk about that here like that. We don't bring it up at all if we talk about it.
As Noam Chomsky said, a willing, self-editing propaganda media that would make any dictator blush. That's the Western press.
Pretty much. I'm curious on what's taking place on the battlegrounds in Ukraine. There's something else I want to ask before I let you go, though. Let's do this. Let's go to Israel first. Play out for me what you think the plan is that Israel is going with. And the reason I ask about this, yes, they're doing ethnic cleansing. Yes, they're trying to reoccupy southern Lebanon. Yes, they're trying to reoccupy Gaza, northern Gaza. I predicted this almost like 8 months ago. It was pretty clear what Netanyahu was trying to do in creating this greater Israel. All right. Hitting Iran is a different animal. And, Israel is a country of what, 8 million? Iran is a country of like 90 million. Israel has shown itself to be vulnerable, meaning whatever strike Israel does, it is not going to stop Iran's capability in responding. Israel is going into this knowing full well they're going to get hit in an overwhelming way, which leaves me to say, okay, well, what the hell is going on then? If you know you're going to get hit in this overwhelming way, what is the point of doing this particular attack? You're vulnerable. Is it to create a pretext for nuclear weapons? I mean, the intel report that was leaked pretty clearly acknowledged that Israel had nukes. They said they had no expectation that Israel was going to use them. But that is on this attack. If they attack in a way where Iran responds in an overwhelming way, are they trying to create a pretext to use nuclear weapons? Meaning, we can't use them now, but if we get hit hard, maybe we have a pretext for it. Or is there something else that they're considering or something else that they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I don't think that Iran or Israel would resort to nukes in this place, not unless the U.S. completely abandoned them, which is completely politically impossible in the United States. So I think that's off the card. The most recent news, some of the Israeli press is reporting that the Israeli government has purposefully leaked that the attack on Iran is being delayed because of the supposed leaks of the Israeli plan.
Interesting. Interesting.
So whether that's true or not, or they're using that as an excuse. Look, the real purpose of strikes is so that Iran strikes back, right? To hit them hard enough that Iran strikes back, launching a major conflagration, right, between Israel and Iran, right, and the entire axis of resistance, so that the U.S. has to come in, right? The whole plan all along has been to provoke Iran. They've been trying to provoke Iran again and again and again. The attacks on the consulate in Damascus, the assassination of all these figures, the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh at the inauguration of the new Iranian president, all of this, the terrorist attacks on Iranian gas pipelines, the assassination of IRGC officials, right? This is all meant to provoke Iran into a war so that the U.S. has to come in. This is about Netanyahu trying to escalate his way out of a conflict that he can't win by getting the U.S. boys and girls and to fight his war.
I know, Mark. I accept that. I totally accept that. I guess what my thing is, it is impossible for the U.S. to protect Israel in this situation. Meaning they're going to get hit. Like that's the part that I keep coming back to. Even if the U.S. Even if they fired every THAAD missile that they had, even if they fired every Iron Dome that they had, it will not stop 2,000 missiles or 1,000 missiles landing all over Israel where they can hit pretty much anywhere in Israel. So it's almost like you are accepting a massive hit, knowing full well that your people are going to die and your infrastructure and everything else is going to be destroyed in order to pull the U.S. into a war. That is mind-blowing.
Look at everything he has done since last October, right? How many of his own people has he sacrificed in what are pointless, right? Military. Israel's military has simply not performed as many people, not us, right? But as many people expected in guerrilla warfare. I don't know why they expected them. Now, Israel's intelligence, Mossad, all right, hands off. They have been mowing down the field of Hamas's and Hezbollah's leadership, right? Just to an incredible degree, penetration and assassination campaigns. But it hasn't stopped Hamas and Hezbollah from fighting yet. Right. And it hasn't resulted in any strategic security improvement for Israel because of that. In fact, just the opposite. Now they've got even Yemen lobbing ballistic missiles into Tel Aviv. Right. I mean, this is it is. Yeah, I think you need to be that cynical with this Israeli government. Right. They are a religious extremists. They are far right religious extremists. And they are buttressed on the other side in the U.S. Of these Christian Zionists in the U.S., right? Just even beyond the political influence of IPAC, right, and campaign finance. But even beyond that, there are plenty of Christian Zionists who believe that the second coming of Christ will come only after the Temple Mount is rebuilt in Israel. How you twist your religious ideology into I've never been able to understand it, but it's quite self-evidently true. It's not saying that there's a majority, but there's enough of them, right, that buy into that. Political elite, particularly within the Republican Party, of course. And Netanyahu is right now looking at Trump coming to power if the poll numbers hold up right after the election, and he'll have even more support from the U.S. than he's already had, because despite everything that he's gotten, there has always been the nagging that Biden and Netanyahu don't like each other. They have quite bad personal relations. But that's not true of Trump and Netanyahu. Netanyahu knows perfectly well how to flatter and butter up Trump. Right. So he's seeing a golden opportunity. First, a weak Biden that can't stop him because he's out to senility lunch. And now a Trump presidency. Netanyahu feels that he is in the driver's seat of the U.S. He is literally the tail wagging the dog right now.
One last question on this. This is chaos, though. I mean, even if the United States got into the conflict, we're still talking about shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. We're still talking about the oil pipeline distribution, basically the way that oil moves through the world being disrupted. I would imagine China is going to have a big deal with that since they get a lot of oil from Iran. I would imagine Russia is probably going to have a deal. In fact, Russia may not, if I'm being super cynical, may like the U.S. being bogged down into a larger war.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
A faster, more thorough victory in Ukraine. Absolutely. Right. I don't hesitate to be that cynical and say that. So are they trying to maneuver them? No. Would they exploit the situation? They would say, if you're stupid enough to fight, another major conflict, they would absolutely go for it. Look, at the biggest problem the U.S. has right now is the production of air defense interceptor missiles and air defense systems. Doesn't have enough. It doesn't have enough for Ukraine. It didn't even have enough for Saudi Arabia fighting the Houthis before this. It certainly doesn't have enough for Israel on top of that. New long-range strike capability that they didn't have before. I think that the U.S., they have been trying to avoid this conflict, but there has been a growing, I think, sense of resignation in the White House that they can't do anything to stop Netanyahu at this point. They don't want war with Iran, right? There's a prioritization of wars with Iran, Russia, and China. The Pentagon has, knocked enough sense. Look, we can't defend Israel right now. And Netanyahu seems perfectly okay with that. So, but we may see things put off now until after the election, right? Because things will be clearer about the level of Israeli support. It's not that long now. So if Israel has already delayed their strikes, for this period of time, they may just wait. It's possible that they may put it back now till after the U.S. election.
Mark Sloboda, international relations and security analyst. Always appreciate you, Mark. You can find Mark, just to be specific, I want to get it right. You can find Mark on, there we are. You can find Mark on Twitter at Mark Sloboda1. You can also find him on Facebook at facebook.com/Gramsci and on his YouTube channel at Real Politic with Mark Sloboda. Mark, man, thank you, man. Always appreciate you. Always appreciate these conversations. They leave me greatly informed. All right, so let's take a quick break. I'm going to let Mark go. I'm going to get prepared for the next guest. You guys are listening to the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. I need to reset this, but I'll be back in a short moment. Okay. Welcome back. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. Hopefully things have gone well. I'll listen to it afterwards, but it sounds like everything went okay. I have my new system in place. I have moved everything around, so I hope things are good. I hope you guys are having a good morning. This is the 8 o'clock hour of the show. We have 2 more hours left. We have the one and only Ted Rall coming up, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist. Ted is fantastic. We're going to have a conversation about domestic politics. Later, we have Daniel McAdams. We're going to have a conversation about the leaks that took place and even about this bizarre tension that is in the air. And I understand it. When something happens or when something is going on, you almost have to be a part of it to kind of get it. But if you're listening to this show and if you're in the political space, we are all waiting for this attack to take place that will bring the world to chaos. You have a deranged lunatic that has access to nuclear weapons, that is at the helm of a fascist religious state, that has decided that murder is the point. And I mean that in real terms. Right now, as we speak, Amos Hochstein, IDF soldier, well, at the very least, he used to be an IDF soldier, dual citizen of Israel and the United States. Joe Biden chose somebody that was an IDF soldier at one point to represent the United States in Israeli policy. All right, that's not going to go well. When Blinken goes to Israel and says, I am a Jew. Okay, well, why are you telling me that? Why do I need to know that you're a Jew as you are, again, going and supposed to be working in the best interest of American policy? I hope you understand what I mean. This is not a one-to-one. What is good for the U.S. is not necessarily good for Israel, and what's good for Israel is not necessarily good for the United States. There need to be a layer of separation. There is not a layer of separation. And these goofballs, these deranged assholes, are dragging us into a war. They full well understand the consequences, meaning how far this could go. It can go into this escalatory spiral. Israel, as I pointed out, will get hit. They could get decimated. If the U.S. wants to get involved, Iran is going to go ballistic. They're going to get help from China and Russia, I would imagine, even if Russia doesn't necessarily get involved. I would imagine they're not won't let them go under. It's somewhat unpredictable in how bad things can get. And again, that lunatic has nukes. The reason why I said murder is the point is because it's clear, and it has been clear for a long time, a settler colonial state wants to colonize and expand. Israel wants this greater Israel. Netanyahu and the Likud party, for all of the talk about Palestinians saying from the river to the sea, the Likud party had it in their manifesto. It had it in their very basis of the organization to expand. They're using October 7th in the same way that the United States used 9/11 as a pretext to reshape the Middle East. Well, in their case, this is their pretext to get the greater Israel. And Netanyahu and the position that he is in is looking at himself in a historical context as being the leader to do that. They're willing to take the risks. They're willing to take the casualties. And yet, they're also willing to kill any man, woman, child, dog, cat, hamster, pet mouse that is going to be in either northern Gaza, southern Lebanon, or parts of Syria that they themselves want to steal. They are bombing Beirut, senseless. And to give you some context on this, the videos are terrifying. I mean, the idea that you are in that place where bombs and missiles are effectively leveling apartment buildings. Again, murder is not a bug. It is a feature. When I get the opportunity, I'm going to show some of those videos because they are utterly terrifying. At least I thought I had it on cue. Maybe Huh, I thought I had it on cue. Maybe I don't have it on cue. Okay, I'll find it. I mean, the videos are all over. And like I said, they are utterly terrifying. But give me a moment. I need to get my next guest in. I'm going to be back in a short, quick break. Welcome back. My name is Jamarl Thomas. You guys are listening to the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. I am getting, oh, there we are. Our guest is in. Let me flip this over so you guys can see who I am referring to. This, and this. Ted, man, always appreciate you joining me. We haven't had the opportunity to talk in a while. Okay, give me 1 second. 1 second. And this. All right, Ted, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Excellent. All right, and let's get the video going. There we are. And we have video. How you doing, man? You doing all right?
Okay.
It's been a while since I had the opportunity to talk to you. I'm glad you can join me. Since, things went, bananas at the company. There we are. Yeah. It's been a while since I had the opportunity to talk to you. How you been doing? You doing all right?
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, obviously, it's a real bummer what happened at Sputnik. But on the other hand, this is probably the kick in the ass that we all needed to, do our own thing because, Mindia was never going to promote the station. He's never going to promote it, So there was no social media presence. I mean, it just felt like we were doing great content that nobody heard,
That was always the weirdness of it with me also. Because I always felt like our analysis and everything else was often good, if not better, than much of what went out on mainstream media. And yet, because it was at the network, it was almost like put in a box. I mean, let me ask you this. Have your points of view changed since you've left the network?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't suddenly think that Zelensky is awesome or that like Russia had no reason to start that war or, or that they even started that war. No, my opinions haven't changed. I mean, I think, it helps if you have a political orientation to work for a place where that political orientation is okay. And so no, I didn't, I never changed my opinions to work there. No, not at all. I mean, did you?
No, and that's kind of the point that I'm making. It's like that place had Americans with various points of view. They were just Americans. It's funny. Margaret Kimberly asked me to write an article on that experience, and I named the article "Life and Times of a Russian Propagandist." And I was going and making this point, like we're in this weird space where having an alternate point of view, even if it's grounded in reality, and even if it's honest, if it contradicts the narrative that is put out, it's absurd. And yet it's childish, but that is the way they went with. They've gotten so, what's the word I'm looking for? So insecure that any point of view that challenges it, we don't want to argue. We just want to dismiss you by calling you a propagandist, despite the fact that the point of view is shared within the context of the country. So it's like I could have the same point of view as, say, like Judge Napolitano, but because I work at the network, I'm a Putin puppet, but Napolitano is just a guy with the same point of view. It is aggravating, to put it mildly.
Well, it's insane. And just you wait. If Trump wins, they're going to go full spectrum bananas. Yeah. What's going on with Malik? Is he doing his own thing too, or?
I talked to Malik yesterday. I asked him if he wanted to come on. He is not. I think he's in a different state, so I don't even think.
Is he going to go work? Is he going to go work for Trump if Trump wins?
Oh, I don't know. I don't get the sense that he is. But look, if Trump offered, I suspect he'd go.
Well, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's funny. I had this discussion with Scott, like, like if if your president needs you, right? I mean, it's hardwired as Americans, like, yes, sir, I'd be happy to help, And
again, he's voting for the guy. He's pushing for him. So let me ask you this. I want to get into some of the politics that's been taking place. I've been fascinated over the last, let's say, 24 hours with the level of, I guess, desperation that seems to be coming out the Democratic Party. I mean, they have gone from John Kelly saying that Donald Trump praised Hitler. In fact, I think I have that clip just for people to hear, to know what we're talking about. Because Kamala Harris went back and amplified that by having a press conference going after Donald Trump for apparently loving Hitler. All right, so this is clip number 5. I hope you can hear this. Let's see. Clip number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's this one.
But if you know what Hitler was all about, it'd be pretty hard to make an argument that he did anything good.
So what would you say when he said to you that Hitler did a lot of good things?
Well, I tell him that. I said, first of all, you should never say that. But if you knew what Hitler was all about from the beginning to the end.
Now, we only have John Kelly's word for that. And it puts me in mind of some of the other commentary that came out where they would say stuff like Donald Trump grabbed the wheel of the car and fought off multiple Secret Service agents in order to take the wheel of the car and go. Like, it's this thing of like, Trump said this, and we have no real clear understanding of the context short of him saying it. And just to piggyback on this, Kamala Harris, after hearing this, and after Democrats screaming about this, goes on TV, does a press conference, and says the following. And again, I hope you can hear this. This is clip number 4, I believe. This one.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired 4-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution He wants a military that is loyal to him. He wants a military who will be loyal to him.
This is wild to me on so many levels. Like, she is really making this case, and I would argue it's something that nobody cares about. Like, her entire argument seems to be anything that comes up, even in the CNN interview, but Trump. But Trump. Trump is horrible. Ergo, whatever you're saying matters less than the fact that Trump is horrible. It is super weird. Give me your take on this.
I agree with you, and I think it's starting. The bloom is starting to come off the rose. I mean, today, last night, Kamala Harris had her town hall on CNN. New York Times did an analysis. They're obviously pro Harris, and in their analysis, they said less than 2 weeks out of the campaign, the voters still don't know who she is. She spends way too much time trying to talk about Trump, not enough time framing herself and trying to explain herself to the voters, introduce herself. And I have said now for the better part of a month that this election seems to be coming down to a devil you know versus a devil you don't know election. The voters, they know Donald Trump. It's kind of like, they don't know Kamala Harris, and people could say, well, you're supposed to know her, but you don't. Okay. She basically has been kept under wraps as vice president for 3.5 years. And now, we're being told like, well, she's great, but we don't have any evidence of that. So, obviously 93% of the country their minds are made up, but for the swing voters who are kind of on the fence, they just haven't gotten to know her. And I think that's, if she loses, and right now it looks like she would, it will be not by a lot, but it'll be, people will be deconstructing this loss. And in large part, it will be due to her failure to come clean. I mean, think about it. We haven't even seen, for example, a friendly interview where where a reporter is invited into her house to hang out with her and Doug and basically show how they live. They haven't been in the Naval Observatory building. We don't even know what her home looks like. That's weird. We knew what Biden's house looked like even while he was hiding throughout the 2020 campaign, because he was in the basement of that house and we used to see his stuff in the background. It is wild. I mean, look, in terms of these remarks, I have to laugh, first of all, as a student of World War II. The last thing you would ever want is Hitler's generals, because they did try to assassinate him. So the level of loyalty wasn't really that high. They blew him up. And if the bomb hadn't been as heavy, he'd be toast, right? So also, for a man of his age, and I know this because my father is older than Donald Trump, it really is not that wild or unusual, or even for students of history to say, Hitler had some positive accomplishments. People always point to things like, the revival of the German economy, reducing unemployment, getting the construction of the Autobahn, also, the Zeppelins, I mean, all sorts of tech stuff. I mean, it's not like, it doesn't make you, Adolf Hitler invented, a lot of campaigning as we know it. He invented the treasury bond, without which, it's like the auto loan comes out of Nazism. There's lots of stuff that came out of Nazism that is not the Holocaust, is not negative, is not invading all of Europe and North Africa and the Western Soviet Union. So it's like, to say that does not make you fucking anti-Semitic or pro-Nazi or pro-Hitler. It just makes you someone who knows a little bit about history, and that's not, the fact that there's nuance, there's nuance in every story. And it's really, we have like these childish politics that really both parties are trying to push. But the Democrats, it seems more galling and grating because they should know better, or at least they used to know better. They used to try to appeal to a slightly, our better angels in a way. At least they used to in like the 70s and 80s.
Not anymore. That's just not true anymore. Yeah, that is not the party. Yeah, that's not the party that we see. And the reality of it is, nobody cares. Like, this is not, they're bringing this issue up at the last minute, just before, what, 2 weeks or something like that to go. And all of a sudden, oh my God, Trump likes Hitler. I don't even know if Trump said that, right? So, yeah, we have no idea. It's just so happened that this is something that came up that John Kelly is saying that Donald Trump said. That was the thing with, I believe, with that the Atlantic story that ran about Trump saying something about the woman being an F. And when you look at the video, the family members come back and say, it's not true. Not only is it not true, stop using her name for your own political grandstanding. And she voted for Trump herself. And there's the video of Donald Trump sitting with the family saying, I'll cover the funeral. So, like, they are bringing all of this stuff that has literally nothing to do with anything in real terms about the election. If you notice, Kamala Harris's answers are always, Trump is so-and-so. You can ask her anything. And it would always end up with Trump is so-and-so. It doesn't seem to work, though. I guess my thing,
for Joe Biden in 2020 because Trump was the sitting president at that point. And some of the really crazy things Trump had done, he had just done, like the trying to down talk the same vaccines that he approved and fast tracked and used himself. To this day, I will never understand why he did that. It makes no sense at all. I do think also that, Democrats patted themselves on the back for a winning strategy that might have lost under other different circumstances. I mean, if, every election is a perfect storm. 2020 was no exception. But you can imagine for example, if Donald Trump had not told his supporters to avoid mail-in voting during a pandemic, I mean, come on, he would have won. And it's like, so that's just like, and he's not making that mistake again. So it's like, it's too simplistic to look at the results and say, well, Biden won. Look, Biden ran for re-election on the grounds that I beat Trump last time. That's not how you do analysis. You look at like, okay, well, based on what the results last time, what can we expect this time? And like, that's, what you could expect this time is another very tight race. Decided by just anywhere from 5 to 7 battleground states, and only a few municipalities within each of those states are going to determine it. And what are these sort of do and think? And like, you're right, Jamarl, no one cares about about Trump's opinions of Adolf Hitler or Nazism. Something that is just now, it's history. It's ancient history. Almost no one is alive today who was alive during Nazism. They're almost all gone. And it's only people who were like little kids are still around. So this is ancient history. It's ridiculous to talk about. And it's like, the voters care about the voters. They want to know, what, are there going to be any programs that are going to make my life easier, economically and otherwise? Donald Trump hasn't been great at answering those questions, but Kamala Harris has been worse. To come out gangbusters. She had a very truncated election. I think the campaign. Look, I think that was all part of a plan. I don't think it's like poor Kamala. I think they decided to do as we talked about earlier on our previous shows. It's the switcheroo, right? They knew they were going to do this, but like, okay, they did the switcheroo, and then she had to come in like Robert De Niro in Brazil, swinging through the window and like, I'm here to help, like that.
Why do you think she's sliding in the polls? I have my own theory of this that I told the audience earlier today. But why do you think she got the honeymoon? She was given this kind of glow. The glow lasted for several weeks. And then over the last 2 weeks or so, you could see a slide in the polling, especially in the battleground states. You could see even in the national polls, I believe it was the New York Times poll or something that had her last month at 6 or 7 points ahead, this month 1 point behind, which is a 6-7 point swing within the course of 1 month. You can see the black vote going from Obama to Joe Biden to Harris, where at Obama it was like at 92%, Joe Biden it was at like at 90%, and for Harris it's going to like 71, 75%. That is a 15% for Republicans of the black vote, which is astonishing. I've seen and come across several blacks who are voting for Trump, something that I've never seen before in the context of an election. Why do you think that that glow eroded away? And by the way, running attack ads against Jill Stein, which is fair game, but it shows, again, a certain level of desperation. I've never seen a Democratic candidate run an ad against a third-party candidate because usually the third party doesn't matter. In this case, she is covering her bets. Why do you think she's sliding in the polling?
Well, look, my instinct, and this is, not based on any focus grouping, is that there was an incredible amount of relief after Biden's withdrawal. People were like, "Oh, thank friggin' God that this guy is finally out. Okay, great. Now what?" And I'd always said all along there was no way the Democrats were ever going to sideline Kamala Harris. That was just never going to happen. And so there were a lot of reasons not to do it, and they didn't. I think what happened is that once people started to pay attention to her, what they saw, this is a casting call. The voters they're hiring someone for the next 4 years, and they're trying to see who they can imagine in that spot. Now, they can imagine Trump in that spot because he's been in that spot. Now, he may have said and done some crazy things, but he looked like a president while he was doing and saying those crazy things. She doesn't strike me. When you see her, it's hard to imagine her actually sitting behind the Resolute desk. It's hard to imagine her, and this might be partly sexism or race and or racism. It might be. It's hard to imagine her sitting down, with Putin to talk about Ukraine, or it's hard to imagine her trying to negotiate some kind of agreement regarding with Netanyahu. It's just like we can't really see it. She comes off. She generally presents as unpleasant and slight, she's stupid, and that's why she can't express any kind of cogent, direct thoughts. Or she's hiding and lying about what she really thinks, and either way, nobody likes that, right? So it's kind of like, I think the voters, the undecided voters who are representing this swing, are kind of like thinking, there's something up about her. There's something a little off. I can't figure out what it is. I don't really care what it is, but I don't care for it. I know that, and I think that's where. What do you think it is? That's what I'm thinking.
My analysis goes into this thing that when she first got in, there was this feeling of newness. We have somebody new. Thank God Joe Biden was going to lose it by a landslide. And so she got this notion of she's black, she's a woman, she's younger. This is by definition something different. And then as the election goes on and they ask her questions like, "Hey, Kamala, what would you do different?" Or, "Hey, Kamala, what would you have done different than Joe Biden?" And her answer is basically, nothing. I'm not Joe Biden, I'm not Donald Trump, but I have no answer for you in regards to what I would do different. Okay, fair enough. Joe Biden was going to lose in a landslide. He was not liked. In fact, his polling went up when he got out the race, not while he was in the race. And so you have an unpopular president where 60 to 80% of the country thinks the country is going in the wrong direction. You, as Kamala Harris, who initially had this feeling of being something new, have shown yourself to not be something new. Just this kind of continuation of the previous thing that the public fundamentally didn't like and fundamentally rejected under Joe Biden. Yeah, Joe Biden was old, fair enough, but I think it went beyond just him being old. I mean, the economic stuff, the wars. I mean, for God's sake, Joe Biden, I've argued that he's been the worst president that we've ever had in this country. And I'm including Trump into that. And a lot of it is because my analysis goes into foreign policy also, where liberals just don't bring their analysis into foreign policy. if I had to put my finger on it, I think it would be that you represent or you came across as if you were something different. I mean, even her mantra was, I'm a new generation of leader. Okay, but a new generation is a temporal issue. It's not a fundamental issue in regards to you doing something different. And I think when the public realized that, their thought was, okay, this is the same quantity that we had before. She wouldn't have done anything different on these items that we believe Joe Biden messed up on. So why on earth are we going to give her that vote? Meaning it's dispiriting. Also, stuff like this with her running around with Liz Cheney, acting like Liz Cheney is some kind of a beacon of democracy.
Bringing the allies together is because they are fully aware of, and remember, to the Congresswoman's point, World War II, remember, this concept of isolation, we were once there as a nation. And then Pearl Harbor.
I'm not going to play the entirety of the video. I'm showing it to just make the point that she has been jumping around the globe or jumping around the country with Liz Cheney and even Dick Cheney and arguing that these are great statesmen and these people believe in democracy. Now, again, put this in context. Dick Cheney was one of the main movers and shakers, cherry-picking information in order to drag this country into a war, to lie us into a war. He spent $7 trillion, thousands of American lives, millions of Iraqi lives to do it. So when she is running around the country with Cheneys, saying that all of a sudden, these are such great people, these are beacons of democracy, what is a typical Democrat thinking in this situation with Kamala Harris running far from the left and basically running from her base? I think it's all of that. Give me a take. I mean, that's the lens I see it through.
Look, I agree with you. I mean, I think what's interesting is, you mentioned sort of the lack of change, and I think this all ties into it. Liz Cheney, even if you love Liz Cheney, I don't think, I think Liz Cheney is probably less popular than Lint. She I don't know what her, don't forget, she was not, even the Republicans can't stand her. Nobody can stand her. There's credible allegations that she gay bashed her own sister. I mean, she's a terrible person. But I mean, even if you don't know any of that stuff, the point is it all feels like ancient history. The Cheneys, let's go back to 2003 and the run up to the war, where half the country wasn't even alive then, right? But we're going to talk about that. I mean, this is supposedly a new way forward, was her campaign slogan. Well, where's the new? Right? I mean, she's new, sort of ish, except everything is a throwback, right? Well, I used to be a DA and an AG many years ago. Here's my allies. There's Obama. He used to be president. You remember him. Liz Cheney. You remember her. You remember her dad. It's you remember, here she is again in the clip that you played, right? You remember, the little history lesson about isolationism before World War II. I love history. World War II is my favorite part of history. But really, truly, American elections are always about the future. And they're always about, specifically on a domestic policy point, what can credibly a president do for me? Probably the most successful president in that respect was FDR in the modern era. I'm going to, you're not going to be in a breadline anymore. You're going to have unemployment insurance. You're going to have, when you get old, you will have a little bit of money coming back to you. These are meaningful, life-changing programs that we still have with us nearly a century later. And those are massive. LBJ with the Great Society and the War on Poverty didn't go as far, but still made a meaningful difference at Medicare, Medicaid, all that. He expanded the promise that was begun by FDR. Not everything has to be an anti-poverty program, but you need a program. I mean, even something as small, and it is small bore, as no taxes on tips, that that
Trump was going with
appearance. But it resonates because it's like, but people are like, I like my service, employees. I like waiters. I like people who work for tips. And yeah, I don't work for tips, but I feel like I can get behind that. And I think, that can help people, that can stimulate the economy. It can put money in the pockets of people who work very hard and don't earn very much money and spend everything that they earn. It's credible. But like, what's really just, Kamala's making a lot of unforced errors. Like, for example, she's been kind of like a la carting demographic programs for demographic groups, right? We're going to have there's the thing for the Black guys. Now there's the thing for the Latino dudes. I don't know if there's anything for the Latino ladies.
Well, weirdly, and not to mention, she introduced that after realizing, oh my God, I'm losing the Black vote. So here's a Black program overnight.
We read Armenian survivors of genocide are now voting against Kamala. Well, next week there will be some kind of program for them, right? I mean, it's it's literally that direct. And 50% of the country is still white, and I know a lot of white dudes are sitting in flyover country thinking, what? No program for me? I mean, even the house program, let's give $25,000 to everyone first buy a house. We all know that the price of houses will just go up by $25,000.
Well, more to the point though, on that one, just to back you up on that, most people live in apartments. They asked her, what do you do for people who don't fit within your program? Because the reality of it is, what about the people who don't want to start a business? They just want a decent job and a decent living. What about the people who don't have houses, don't want to buy a house, just live in apartments? These people are fundamentally just kind of out to lunch or out to dry. And I just to piggyback on something else you said, she doesn't have a mandate. Meaning, with Obama, he's I'm going to do healthcare. That's the thing I'm going to do. Bernie Sanders, I'm going to do healthcare and education, and $15 an hour minimum wage. He was very clear on that. That was the thing. That was his coalition. That's what he wanted to accomplish. She doesn't really have that. I mean, she was just kind of, and Joe Biden didn't have it either. Joe Biden's thing was just, I'm better than Trump. I'm going to beat Trump. I'm going to get rid of Trump. She seems to be trying to take that particular mantle also, but I don't know if that works. And the other issue with Gaza, for example, they asked her, David Axelrod, after the CNN interview, she was lambasted by CNN. And one Republican said, I want to pay her to get up there and do another hour on CNN. Another one made the point, Axelrod said she was doing word salad answers for several minutes at a time when she didn't want to answer a question. What's her name? Dana Bash comes out and says, I've been talking to people, and if she was trying to seal a deal here, it didn't do it. And there were questions like the following that she did not answer, or at the very least, she did not answer.
2020.
Well, women.
It's not a joke.
That's Joe Biden saying that he wants to lock Trump up.
Is a border wall stupid?
Where is it? It's this one, I think. I'm sorry, Ted. I have so many clips. It's the one. Let me see if I can find it. Come on, is it this? That's blinking. It must be this one. Come on.
What do you say to voters
Right here, this one.
about supporting a third-party candidate or
the strong feelings that people have. I don't know that anyone who has seen the images who would not have strong feelings about what has happened, much less those who have relatives who have died and been killed. And I know people and have talked with people. So I appreciate that. But I also do know that for many people who care about this issue, they also care about bringing down the price of groceries. They also care about our democracy and not having a president of the United States who admires dictators and is a fascist. They also care about the fact that we need practical, common sense solutions from a leader who is willing to work across the aisle on behalf of the American people and not themselves. They want a president who cares about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
So effectively, what do you say to people who call this a genocide, who have serious moral qualms with the idea that the U.S. government is giving money, guns, weapons, missiles, political clout for Netanyahu to go on this murder spree and indiscriminately kill these people in order to make a greater Israel? What do you say to those people who consider genocide to be a red line and they're going to vote for a third party? Well, I say that we still need abortions, and I understand the genocide thing, but abortion and democracy, it's like, dude, I don't think she quite gets that there are red lines. If Hitler does great with keeping the trains going, okay, that's nice. But if Hitler is also murdering 6 million Jews and 30 million Russians, I don't really care about the trains. Like, there's something to be said about drawing a red line as standards as to where you're willing to go with a political party. And in my point of view, you should not be rewarded for backing a genocide. Whatever they want to say about Trump, that is purely hypothetical. What is true right now is that a Democrat is in office giving him all the political support in the world. None of this could be happening without the U.S. support for Netanyahu to do this. And to make it even worse, they know full well that he is going for an attack on Israel to create a greater and larger war that is going to pull the U.S. in, and they still continue to give them weapons. So, yeah, somebody who says, look, genocide is a red line to me, and I don't believe that a party should be able to get elected if they're backing a genocide, what do you say to those people? Basically nothing. There's nothing I can say to those people short of, hey, there are other issues that I think you should be concerned about. I am concerned about those issues, but I'm also more concerned about the fact that you are getting 40,000 people killed, 2/3 of which are women and children, as a low estimate, and is continuing right now to bomb Beirut. And again, as I pointed out, murder is the point. Meaning the surrender document that they're giving to Lebanon, they're doing it under this notion of we're going to continue to terrorize you unless you give us southern Lebanon, or for that matter, starving out Gaza. It's a red line. She doesn't seem to quite get that, nor pull herself from the position that Joe Biden has effectively gone with to give Israel any and everything that they want.
Well, I mean, Jamarl said it really beautifully, right? I mean, imagine if like the devil were to come suddenly appear here on your show and say, okay, listen, if you sign here, inflation's going to go to 20%, abortion rights are going to be banned for the next 20 years, but there's going to be no more arms shipments to Israel. The U.S. will no longer be complicit in the genocide against the people of Gaza or Lebanon. Would you take that deal? I would take that deal. I think a lot of women would take that deal, even though they care about abortion rights. Now, I do know women who have said, no, I would not take that deal. I care more about American women and their ability to control their own bodies than I care about people in a foreign land. Now, I personally think that's psychotic, but it sort of, goes with, ideas of.
That is Harris's argument, though, just to be clear.
That is her argument. And her argument, and it's the only argument she can really make, is there are many issues. This is one, Gaza is just one issue. Please don't vote on one issue when you agree with me about presumably these other issues. But like you, look, I do think the Hitler example, since Hitler's in the news and, Kamala's talking about him, he's fair. The Fuhrer is fair game, right? It's just like you said. I mean, there were a lot of people in Germany who thought, he's doing a lot of good things, as Donald Trump may or may not have said. And, it's like this other stuff is really unfortunate, but, we just have to let it go. Look, they can argue that all they want. But for people like me, and I suspect many, many more Americans, like even if I really deeply admired Kamala Harris, even if she were, Bernie Sanders on steroids, $30 minimum wage, get rid of Taft-Hartley Act, free college tuition for all, socialized medicine, all that, but I'm going to keep bombing the crap out of Gaza and Lebanon? No, just no, because I've been to these places. I know that I travel a lot, and I know these are real people, and they are not less than we are, and they are not less important than we are, and we have a responsibility to them, and to try to lean on our government. And if I mean, this campaign seems a lot like Kamala's campaign really feels a lot like Hillary's campaign, even like the New Way Forward, I'm with her, that's been recycled. And that was the same kind of argument. Yeah, but you agree with me on abortion. Yeah, but you're a crazy militarist, right? And I mean, and it's like, so basically what happened, right? A lot of people look at what happened in 2016. I'm like, yeah, look at what happened in 2016. What happened in 2016 is that progressives sat on their hands. She lost. And 4 years later, if you looked at that Democratic debate stage in 2019, 2020, every person on that debate stage had to endorse the $15 minimum wage, Medicare for all, and student loan forgiveness that Bernie wanted, right? Bernie set the agenda. Why? Because the corporate establishment of the Democratic Party was terrified of a repeat of 2016 if they lost the progressives. Well, so there is a price to pay. You end up with 4 years of a Republican president, for sure. But okay, as much, it's kind of like political chemotherapy. Like, it's the only way you can only cure the patient by making him really sick for a while. And it's like, and that's what this is. It's like, I don't want to see Donald Trump win again. I don't like Republicans. But the point is, I'm not going to fall for this trap of, I don't care about Jamarl. I don't care about Ted. I don't care about all the progressives. Don't vote for us. We don't need you. Okay, you said so. We're in complete agreement. You don't need me. I am not needed. I will not show up. And then it's like, how dare you not show up? Well, you told me. It's like, it's like borderline personality disorder. Like they say that the borderline personality people say, like, I hate you. Don't leave me. That's what this is.
Too funny. I hate you. Don't leave me. Yeah, it's a bit weird. I mean, the Democratic Party is the only party that makes excuses for any time they lose, and there's never any introspection about it. It's like, oh, blacks were insufficiently loyal. The Russians helped Trump across the finish line. Oh, that Jill Stein. If Jill Stein wasn't on the ballot, and the environmentalist was taking cues from the Russians. It's like, dude, you just lost. Al Gore didn't even win his own state. Hillary Clinton was a greatly disliked candidate that you were just trying to force down people's throat. This notion that it's my turn, as opposed to, just being the best candidate, having no movement or anything else. No, Ted, thank you for this, man. I really appreciate you joining me. Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist. Ted, where can people find you?
Well, so these days, I especially would love people, go to my website, rall.com, but I would love for you to go and check out my new show with Manila Chan. People who followed our previous show will know this is a looser version. It's called the TMI Show. You can find it on YouTube, Rumble, everywhere. It's a Ted Manila Information Show. So that's otherwise known as Too Much Information. And it streams live 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. Eastern time, but you can also, of course, find the old ones on the YouTube and so on.
Love that Too Much Information Show. I love that name. Ted, man, thank you for joining me, Ted. Thank you so much. Absolutely. All right, guys, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to let Ted go. And let's see, what am I supposed to do? I think it's this and this. I believe I can do that. Yes. All right. I'm going to let Ted go. Look, you guys are listening to the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. I want to... Oh, we have Super Chats. All right. Let's see if I can read these. Lefties in the United States are called commies, yeah, because they want health care like our Canadian neighbors. We aren't asking for much. We were told no every time. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. When you go to the rest of the world, including Israel, by the way, they have health care. They have a healthcare system. We're giving them billions of dollars, and yet they have healthcare. We don't necessarily have it. And instead, we put that expense on our businesses. Well, imagine if that expense wasn't on the businesses. Imagine if it was something that we paid into, let's say through our taxes. Everybody gets service without having to put the money into it. Even if your taxes went up a bit, even if the corporation taxes went up a bit, it's clearly a better way forward as opposed to the system that we have now. I agree with you. Jamarl, your mic is low. Is it? The volume on your mic. Turn the volume. Oh, what just happened? What just happened? Something must have happened. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. All right. Okay, the speaker's right. All right, so let's do this. I'm gonna kill this. I'm sorry, guys. I got to do all the technical work myself. Hold on. This. All right. Let's see. Did anything change in regards to the volume? That's why I continue to check, because I want to get it right. Hold on. And sometimes there's this weird phenomena where it automatically guts the volume on the mic. Huh, that's weird. Okay, so all right, let's do this. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to take a quick break. And while I take that break, I'm going to try to work out any weirdness. Yeah, that's fine. All right, I don't see anything, but look, let's take a quick break, and I'll see if I can work something out. You guys are listening to the Jamarl Thomas Show. Back in a moment. All right. I was able to fix the issue. Now I have an echo. Give me 1 second to resolve that. All right. So I figured out the issue. Something goes on where it automatically lowers the volume. I have no idea why it does that, but there is some switch, some faculty that when the volume gets to a particular thing, it just lowers it. I will figure out what that is, but in the meantime, I will keep open the volume switch in order to pay attention to it. Shout out to Luca. Thank you, my man. I appreciate the heads up as always, and I'm sorry, give me one moment, just doing a lot at once. All right, there we are. All right, is this better? This is good, this is good. Excellent, excellent. All right, so my next guest is going to be coming in soon. We're going to have this conversation about what is taking place right now in Lebanon. It is, to call it tragic is an understatement. I think I have a clip on what is going on there to give context. This is one of the buildings in Beirut being blown to smithereens. And that is effectively taking place day and night, over and over and over again. And again, as I pointed out before, that's not a bug, that's a feature. Entire point is the murder. Meaning, right now, Amos Huckstein, I believe the name is, he is in his dual citizen. He was an IDF soldier, and for whatever reason, Joe Biden made him the envoy to represent American interests, despite the fact that he was an IDF soldier. So he is over there giving a surrender notice to Lebanon, effectively saying, we want to be able to occupy southern Lebanon. Now, this is rather astonishing. For one, the Lebanese government doesn't necessarily seem to be all that involved in the conflict. They haven't necessarily fired a shot in anger, despite the fact that all of these people are being slaughtered. On the other side, Hezbollah is the organization that seems to be defending Lebanon. So any deal that you make with the government of Lebanon to give territory would seem to be given territory that is being fought over by Hezbollah. It is a weird situation. It almost seems like they're trying to provoke a civil war in the country. And so my guest, when he comes on, will help me discuss. Let me know if you have issues. I will erase the little parts from the video like this, but you guys get to see the live version of how the cake is made in practice. It's like when you don't have an engineer, man, all of that stuff has to be done on the fly. Anastasia also, thank you. Absolutely, thank you. Look, every bit helps. Whether you like the video, whether you share the video, whether it's through PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, whether it's just sharing the content. All of those things are beneficial. My objective, my goal is to grow this channel. And I want it to be, I feel like I've been stuck at 30,000 for a long time. Now, to be fair, I haven't been consistent. But from here on out, Monday through Friday, 7 to 10, I will be here. I am looking for another radio position, but who knows when that will come about. And even when that does come about, I still want to be able to maintain and grow this. In retrospect, I should have never let the channel go. I'm still waiting on my guests. He may be having difficulty getting on. Yes, you do. If you can come on, you do. He is logging on now, and I really want to speak to Esteban today because it's complicated. Laith was our producer. Laith had Lebanese Syrian heritage, and he would go and explain the politics, and it is complicated in many respects. I mean, Lebanon, I gotta be honest, I am not, Esteban would be the person to explain Lebanon. I am not a good steward of trying to explain that. They have multiple factions that are in the country. It seems that Israel is trying to use those factions to provoke a civil war. I don't quite understand, I do, but I don't, how Israel can murder this many Arabs, this many Muslims, and the rest of the Muslim world just watches. It seems like there will be this kind of philosophical responsibility. You get Erdogan, who talk a big game, but doesn't do anything. You get Saudi Arabia, who nobody believes cares about the Palestinians, but the population definitely cares about the Palestinians. Egypt, under no circumstances, want Hamas, a group that is somewhat affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood, into Egypt, which means that Egypt is not going to allow Palestinians to be pushed out of their homeland into Egypt. I mean, keep in mind, when I was traveling to Egypt, well, before I was traveling to Egypt, you remember there was the Arab Spring. And during the Arab Spring, the Muslim Brotherhood was able to take power, kind of, in Egypt. Well, the Muslim Brotherhood was greatly disliked. Morsi, the one who was in charge, was put into a cage and executed when they had a second spring that brought the military back in with open arms of the public. So there's that. Jordan is filled to the gill with Palestinians. If I'm not mistaken, like 40% or more of the country is Palestinian. They are not going to take any more either. So there's a dilemma. The reality of it is Israel only really has three options: exterminate, evacuate, meaning force evacuations of the people, or, yeah, he must be having difficulty getting on. Exterminate, evacuate, or come up with some solution where you basically live with them. Living with them is off the table. Extermination seems to be the goal. Now, right now, Israel is putting out a plan in order to take northern Gaza, take southern part of Lebanon, and let's be honest, those goals are going to expand the more that they're able to take. And so the world that we have now is Israel doesn't define its borders. The U.S. gives it a blank check. You have a president who's out to lunch and is deeply weak president. And you have an election where Donald Trump, it's believed, would give him any and everything that he wants with, I guess, greater fervor than Joe Biden giving him any and everything that he wants. Okay, he must be having trouble getting on. It's still coming. Or do you want to do tomorrow? Look, I'll edit this part out. Come on. Okay. Okay. In the old days, producers would do this. All right, I don't know what's going to happen with this, so let's do the news. Interestingly enough, as we were pointing out, as Ted and I were having this conversation, we were pointing out, there seems to be a certain desperation in the Democratic Party. It is overwhelming. Everything from, it's almost like they're throwing everything at the kitchen sink. Donald Trump is a fascist. One of the things that I really wish when somebody makes that argument, Trump is a fascist, is for them to articulate in what way. Kamala Harris would throw it out there in a heartbeat. Democrats would throw it out there in a heartbeat. I remember having a conversation with a Democrat and asked him how. He said, well, Donald Trump didn't want to leave the election. I said, fair enough. I agree with you on that. He should have been put in prison for trying to steal the election. It is a great crime. And not just a great crime. I don't even know how he's even given credibility to run again after doing that. But fair enough. But what did he do in office that you believe was fascistic? And one answer was, well, he had the Muslim ban. And as I pointed out, but the Muslim ban was purely within the context of his powers as a president to do. The Supreme Court would have knocked it down if it wasn't legal. Okay, so what else? And oftentimes there's this kind of absence because they don't entirely have, one thing is rhetoric. Oh, do you need me to connect? Yes, if you can. Oh, dude. Dude, it's like 9:16. So, this desperation is palpable. I've never seen a Democrat run an ad against the Green Party. And yet, that is what Kamala Harris is doing. Now, I know a lot of lefties were very angry at this. I don't know why lefties are angry at this. If Jill Stein could put her gloves on, Jill Stein could get hit like anybody else. She's running in a political race. She's in a different party. I think the irony of it is that Democrats always believe that, for whatever reason, that Green Party voters should be Democrats. And yet, in this particular situation, they're acknowledging that these are different parties, hence running the ad against a different party. From my point of view, as they're different parties, one can run an ad against another. It's just weird. And it's weird because it shows a level of desperation, of fear, of concern with their chances in the election, that even Stein, who often gets 1 or 2% of the vote, may be enough for Harris to lose that state. Ergo, these campaign ads. What she knows is that Donald Trump is beating her in regards to the Arab vote. And not just beating her in regards to the Arab vote, Jill Stein is pulling in about 4% of that vote also. That looks like a loss or a very close race in states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, etc. These are the battleground states that Kamala Harris needs to win. And they are deeply, deeply unconfident, at the very least, as expressed by the way that they have been acting and the things that they have been doing. For example, this is the ad against Jill Stein.
You can tell a lot about a person by the company they keep. Like Jill Stein. Stein isn't sorry about swinging the 2016 election to Trump. And now she's being helped by MAGA allies and Trump's former lawyer. Longtime Klan leader David Duke endorsed her. And like Trump, she's cozied up to Vladimir Putin. Jill Stein, look at her friends. Because a vote for Stein is a vote for Trump. Just ask Putin.
Jill Stein, I like her very much.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
And of course, they added in, I'm Jill Stein, Donald Trump saying he likes Jill Stein a lot. Right, because that's pertinent to anything. Like I said, my point is it gets across a certain level of desperation, screaming that Donald Trump is apparently in love with Hitler. And Joe Biden screaming that Donald Trump should be locked up. I mean, they're amplifying this stuff. There was a story right here. I'll go with this one too.
You can tell a lot about a person by the company they keep.
That they ran against Donald Trump, dealing with that woman that died, that soldier. If I can find that clip.
2020.
Right here. Well, to be clear, it's not that it's the Trump team that's denying that. It's also the family of the victim that is denying it. The family of the victim is not just denying it, she is literally voting for Trump. If I'm not mistaken, she said she already voted for Trump. So this idea that, oh, this is taking place, Trump denying it, and Trump is lying. Well, according to the family, that's not the case. Also, there is video that I have watched myself yesterday with Donald Trump sitting with that family, and in sitting with the family, being very gracious, asking them, do you need help with the funeral? Oh, here's Esteban. Excellent. He is joining us. Let me bring him on. Let's see. Gallery view. Esteban, can you hear me? One second. This. Okay. 1 second. Esteban, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Why can't you hear me? Can you hear me? Esteban, can you hear me?
Hi, Jamarl. Yes, I don't know why I couldn't hear you.
There you are. How you doing, man? You doing all right?
I'm good. You know, as the situation allows, but thankfully where I live is not as bad as you know in the sky.
I'm sorry. It is my heart goes out to you in this. Like, it is astonishing seeing some of the pictures that are taking place with the bombings at night, with the bombings during the daytime, bombing television stations, bombing like 1,000-year-old shrines and whatnot. From my point of view, and I want to get your take on this, it seems that murder is the point. And what I mean by murder is the point that Israel right now, Amos Hochstein is bringing a letter, apparently from Netanyahu or the Netanyahu government, that is demanding what is effectively a surrender. They want the ability to be able to control southern Lebanon, including running military exercises and having control of the airspace. And of course, they're doing the killing and the bombing with this notion of, we will continue murdering and killing indiscriminately unless you sign this document of surrender. How do you see it? I guess the first question is there any chance? Well, first question is, who is it aimed at? Is this aimed at the Lebanese government, trying to get the Lebanese government to sign this document? And the reason I ask that is because the Lebanese government hasn't fired a shot in anger. Hezbollah has been the one that has been defending the country. So who is this aimed at? And is there any chance for Lebanon to even sign this document?
It's aimed at the Lebanese people, as you're saying, at the Lebanese government, at the officials. It's aimed at it's a threat. You know, this is exactly what it is. It's a threat. It is not a ceasefire deal, because what we're seeing happen in Lebanon, you know, a UN member state, a member of the Arab League, is exactly what's been happening in Gaza. It's the same script, down to you must have seen the 3D render that the Israeli army released a few days ago about a Hezbollah bunker underneath a hospital, which holds like, you know, billions of dollars and gold bars and who knows what else, and, you know, has a little Hezbollah flag hanging on one of the walls. That's what they did with Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza before they decimated it. They destroyed it. They razed it to the ground, and there was nothing underneath. It's a lie. So this is, again, the same, down to now this, you know, ceasefire threat. Not a ceasefire, you know, just like what they want is for the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army to all of a sudden, I guess, start fighting their war for them, you know, like kind of sandwich Hezbollah, I guess, in the south. because Israel has made so little gains in South Lebanon. As you're saying, they in the middle of the day, without warning, bombing the entrance of Lebanon's largest public hospital, or what happened yesterday in the historic city of Tyre, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the entirety of the city getting carpet bombed. It's despite all of this, Israel hasn't actually made any gains on the ground. Like in Gaza, right? The history repeats itself. In Gaza, the Palestinian resistance is still fighting. They're still reconstituting themselves. They're not close to being defeated. Hezbollah is a much larger force that is fighting at this moment guerrilla tactics in the south, and that is, dealing heavy damage to the Israelis. Yesterday, Hezbollah said that they have killed at least 70 Israeli soldiers, injured over 600, destroyed like 30 Merkava tanks. They haven't been able to do really anything in the South Israel despite getting their asses kicked. So they do what they do on the sky, right? Which is destroy buildings, bomb hospitals, destroy entire cities that they know they will never be able to steal, because this is land theft in the end, right? This is about land theft. As you're saying, the proposal that Amos Hochstein has, it's, they want Lebanon to give them the South, right? Here you go. Here's the South of our country. For your settler colonial state that is committing genocide, that is responsible for a new Holocaust that is being live streamed to our phones every single day. So what is the likelihood of it happening? I wouldn't put it at 100% negative. I would put it at 99% negative that it would happen, because you don't know how bad it can get. We don't know how bad it can actually get here, because Hezbollah is not fighting against Israel alone. This is not Israel versus Hezbollah. This is Hezbollah versus Israel, the United States, the UK, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Germany, like one of the biggest sponsors of this war and this genocide. So if Hezbollah, like Hamas, at the end of this survives, it's going to be a victory. It is going to be a victory, because this is a war, and this is asymmetric warfare. This is not, Russia against Ukraine. This is a completely different thing.
But I guess, okay, that's fair. I totally understand that. And you're right. Israel is getting weapons, money, political support, all of this stuff, intelligence from the United States and all of these kind of global actors in the West. And you're also right. If things get too bad, the Lebanese government may be incentivized or terrorized in order to accept a deal like that. But what is the point of a deal? Like, is the point of that deal, if the Lebanese government accepted that deal, then the Lebanese government would be at odds with Hezbollah, meaning the government would be at odds with itself, because Hezbollah makes like a third of the government of Lebanon. How does that work? Is the objective to try to force or to incentivize a civil war in the country? What are the chances of that?
Again, I wouldn't put it at completely impossible, because the pressure that is being waged, not just militarily, but through the media channels, like the pro-US, that essentially Zionist Lebanese media that exists, that justifies attacks against civilians and tries to inflame the street. Right now, I saw earlier that if the war continues, this is gonna cost Lebanon 9% of its GDP. Lebanon, a country that since 2019 has been living the worst economic crisis of the modern era, that had, I don't know if maybe I remember, and by the way, about what happened to Sputnik Radio is a complete shame. But I remember once I talked to you, I think we talked about when the depositors were going into the banks in Lebanon, with weapons or with gasoline cans to threaten the people at the banks just to get their deposits back. Right, the deposits that the banks froze and stole and took away. This is Lebanon, right? Like, Lebanon is a country that is just living crisis after crisis, the port explosion. So it's a country that also, has like a huge refugee population from Palestine, from Syria. So there's many sides that you can pull the strings, and you cannot tell which one is going to be the one that breaks. But I do think it's very unlikely, at the very least, in the near future or in the mid-length future, to see the government kind of give in to this, impose a president on Lebanon, impose their president on Lebanon, pick a president for Lebanon. But to do that, they need to have parliament meet. And to have parliament meet, you need to have guarantees, because as you're saying, Hezbollah is also a political party. It represents a large portion of the population. It's part of the largest bloc in parliament. So if they want the votes, they need to give guarantees to these lawmakers to go to parliament and not be assassinated. And that does not exist. That does not exist at this moment. So, short of a military coup, which the Lebanese army it doesn't have the capability of doing this at all. It's not going to happen, right? Right now, Hezbollah is the most powerful actor because of its weapons, because of its fighters, because of its political representation as well. And also, at this point, it's not Hezbollah that is killing Lebanese men, women, and children. It's Israel with U.S. weapons. So you can never get away from that. You can have Amos Hochstein and Anthony Blinken do all of the tours of the region that you're not going to get away from reality.
One of the interesting, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you mentioned that. Because what they seem to be trying to do is to try to say, this is Hezbollah's fault. I know that it's Israel that's bombing you, but it's Hezbollah's fault. You got to blame Hezbollah. I mean, keep in mind, they did that the entire war. Meaning, when the United States talks about this stuff, it's always dishonest. It all started on October 7th. Israel was just standing there being a moral apartheid state and, occupying and using a ghetto in order to hold these people in. But they were completely innocent. And the Palestinians, just out the blue, attacked them. Everything started on October 7th. And even when they talk about the progression of the conflict, they would say, well, Israel has a deal. And people would be like, what do you mean Israel has a deal? Netanyahu just said that's not true. Why would Israel be against his own deal? And even now, when they talk about, like Sinwar, the death, Blinken, Matthew Miller, that slimy degenerate, came out and said something like, well, Israel wanted a deal. Hezbollah and Hamas never wanted a deal. They would never accept a deal. Keep in mind, Netanyahu murdered the lead negotiator in Tehran. Netanyahu killed Nasrallah when it was understood at some point that Nasrallah was open to accepting a deal. The U.S., France, and these other countries lied to Iran, which was part of the reason that Iran didn't even strike, because they thought, okay, well, they're going to be able to get a deal, and so I don't necessarily have to strike them because they're going to be able to get a deal. Okay, well, that even shown itself to be false and a lie. He felt like he was just basically used and taken advantage of. They talk about this stuff in these warped, contrived ways in order to, let's say, advance a particular narrative to protect Israel. The problem with that line of thinking is that when Israel does something, like attack Iran, they're not going to hold Israel responsible. They're going to immediately say Iran shouldn't attack, Iran shouldn't respond, Iran shouldn't have did so-and-so, as opposed to get your dog back on the leash. It is bizarre. And I want to play this clip for you because I want to get your take. Does Blinken have any credibility at all in the Middle East? Or for that matter, does the U.S. have any credibility at all in the Middle East?
Short answer.
But just no. Just absolutely no. I want to play this clip. This is Anthony Blinken, and this is him wasting his time, getting nothing accomplished, as he has done for the past year, and basically bullshitting the public.
Since October 7th, a year ago, achieved most of its strategic objectives when it comes to Gaza, all with the idea of making sure that October 7th could never happen again. In the space of a year, it's managed to dismantle Hamas's military capacity. It's destroyed a bunch of its arsenal. It's eliminated its senior leadership, including, most recently, Yahya Sinwar. This has come at the cost, great cost, to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Now is the time to turn those successes into an enduring strategic success. And there are really two things left to do. Get the hostages home and bring the war to an end with an understanding of what will follow. And that's what we've been working on this past day, and will continue to work on throughout this trip. Even as all of this is happening, it's absolutely essential that humanitarian assistance get to the people who need it in Gaza. A couple of weeks ago, Secretary Austin and I wrote to the Defense Minister, Strategic Affairs Minister, with a list of things that need to happen in order for assistance to get more effectively to people who need that assistance. So we went over that in some detail yesterday, and I can report that there's progress made, which is good, but more progress needs to be made. And most critically, it needs to be sustained.
I can't stand him. Like, in real, I cannot stand. He is one of the sleaziest. Him and Matthew Miller are one of the sleaziest people that they have in this administration. And truth of the matter is, like, we need to be very clear. Blinken is the one that lied about Israel starving the Palestinians. Lied to Congress, no less. Blinken, in this conversation, when he was over there talking to Netanyahu, the reporting is that he told Netanyahu, there is a perception that you are trying to starve the Palestinians out of the north. Netanyahu said, that's not true. And Blinken said, okay, well, can you come out and say that? Can you basically make the case that you're not really doing that? And they basically told him no. They told him no. So when he's sitting here saying, well, we believe that there was progress that was been made and everything else, he's not telling the truth. He's lying, correct?
Completely. Like, at this point, the only thing that Anthony Blinken is getting out of his trips, I would imagine, is, like a boost of his frequent travel miles, I guess. Because they're so completely useless. They're so completely meaningless. This thing that begging Netanyahu, to be like, can you publicly say you're not ethnically cleansing the north of Gaza? You just make a comment so that what we're seeing with our own eyes, you deny it. Because, it's like, but it doesn't seem like they even care anymore, because you had Matthew Miller a few days ago telling the press that Israel has a right to target civilians. This is a narrative that you're saying. This is really just at this point,
I'm sorry. Please finish your point.
Go ahead.
Well, I was
nothing that I think the Palestinians are on there. Let me just finish quickly. I think the Palestinians sadly are kind of on their own at this point. I mean, this Holocaust that is happening in the north of Gaza in particular, there's really no help coming.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of one of the reasons why they want to shift the narrative so much.
I mean, but I don't know how they would shift. I don't know how they would go about shifting that narrative. I mean, the reality of it is we're seeing with our own eyes Israel level apartment buildings, level hospitals. I mean, you pointed out that they was like, Hezbollah has all of this gold and everything else in the hospital. The BBC did an investigation, went through caskets, went through medical waste. They found nothing. Meaning they are making similar arguments in Lebanon that they were making in Gaza in order to do the same sort of wanton destruction and killing and murder that they were doing there. And it kills me that the rest of the world sits there with their hands in their ass. Like, meaning they are watching a large group of people just get slaughtered, just absolutely get slaughtered. They are not fighting militaries, by the way, meaning they're using airplanes, they're using tanks against groups. Hamas is a ragtag organization living on a shoestring budget to fight back as resistance. They have no capability in the sense of a military. They're just resistance. Hezbollah is not a formal military either, meaning the only formal military that they're fighting with is Iran, and the moment that they strike Iran, they're going to get their clock clean. Give me your take on that, by the way. I don't think I had the opportunity to talk to you about it. It is clear as day that Israel is vulnerable, meaning when Iran did their, let's say, test fire, their example, they're showcasing their capability. It was very clear that Iran had the capability of hitting Israel and that Israel couldn't do anything about it. Not to mention them running low on missiles, and even the missiles they had couldn't stop the hypersonic missiles they were hitting. So Israel is going into an attack knowing full well that Iran can launch a very lethal, overwhelming strike that their air defense cannot really do anything about. So, what is the thinking here? Is the thinking A, we're going to get the United States involved because we're going to get in over our heads, or B, we are trying to create a pretext to use a nuclear weapon, meaning we're going to absorb an overwhelming attack and then say this is our casus belli to operate nukes? What is your thought on this? Because either way you look at it, the U.S. can't protect Israel from getting hit.
No, it can't. And I think Israel is really willing, just look at the way they've treated their captives in Gaza, right? Not even lifting a finger to try to get them out, really. More likely than not killing them themselves with these indiscriminate attacks. So when you consider that and you extrapolate it to the entirety of the country with the approach of this government, you see this government is willing to let its people die, as many as it may need in order to achieve exactly the goals you're talking about. I think, at this point in particular, this genocide, it can no longer be just described as an Israeli genocide. At this point, this is a US genocide, it's a UK, it's a British and a German genocide as well. So in that regard, the question of Israel wants to drag the US into this, the US has been, happily dragged for a while now. At this point, they don't really need much more reason, right? I guess send troops on the ground, but then when you need to consider something that they talk now, Kamala Harris and I guess Donald Trump as well. I haven't been keeping up too much with the electoral circles in the US. But there's this narrative going on over there that I have noticed that Iran is now the biggest threat, right? They are the threat to the US and they are the threat to the world. Iran is literally on the other side of the world, first of all. Second of all, Iran, as far as UN inspectors know and the rest of us know, has no nuclear weapons. Third, Iran is powerful internally and on a long-range basis. That meaning what? Meaning that Iran has no capabilities to send troops, like the US. Iran has no bases around the world. They cannot just start deploying troops.
Well, I'll give you another one. How many countries have Iran invaded?
None.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and again, okay, maybe the narrative when you bring up reality is oh, you're an Iran apologies, or this is Russian disinformation or whatever. It's not. It's simply facts. It's factual, right? Israel has an air force. Iran doesn't. Israel has nuclear weapons. Iran doesn't. Israel has the backing of the US and all of their bases and all of their ships that are here in the region and all of their submarines. Iran doesn't. Do you honestly see Russia or China coming into fight in the name of Iran? I don't see it. I don't see it at all.
I mean, but here's the thing, though.
I see them giving them, some sort of support, but not actually coming in and being we're gonna fight side by side with our Iranian brothers. I think they would take a very, very, I don't know, shift in the dynamics of geopolitics in general, or a very big event for this to happen. But then when you look at Israel, it's the complete opposite, you have all of this willingness to protect it and the reality, Jamarl, is that the reason is because this is existential. This is not just existential for Israel, it's existential for the entirety of the US-led world order, right? It is Israel in many ways is kind of the last fully, Western colonial outpost that needs to be protected, right? There's other, obviously, in Latin America, in Africa, etc., but they're not Israel, right? They're not what Israel is. They're not a colonial state based on apartheid and based on land theft, right? On sending your settlers and taking this land. Israel is it. So you need to look at it from all of these angles, and I do think that if Israel goes down, the US goes down. There's never gonna be a possibility, especially unless again there's a massive shift internally in the United States, that for the US to be I'm gonna cut my losses and let Israel sink. It's not gonna happen.
So, okay, no, that's interesting. I don't see. From my point of view, I'm an American, right? I'm not an Israeli. I don't necessarily care what happens to Israel, especially in the context of my own living situation. It's its own country. If it wants to pick fights with countries around it, then it should deal with it on its own. It shouldn't need us to get involved and give it a blank check to do so. I say that to say, yeah, you're right. It's a settler colonial state and it's doing what settler colonial states do. In fact, it's basically America, if you think about it, just not with the religious bit. America went into, yeah, we got to the country, we expanded, we killed all the Native American population, we put them in reservations, and we celebrate it as Thanksgiving. And I would imagine that part of what Netanyahu is thinking is of himself in a historical context. I'm going to create greater Israel. I'm going to be the one who's remembered for expanding the borders of Israel into Lebanon, into Syria, etc. Like, yeah, it's messianic in many respects. It's deranged. He's basically using October 7th as a way of gaining more territory for Israel. It's astonishing when you think about it because of the potential for what he could do for the world economy. I mean, they can basically take down the world economy, or at the very least in the context of oil and gas and how that stuff gets distributed around the world, based purely on this maniac in Israel. It's astonishing that the U.S. is allowing that to take place. Tell me something else. What is taking place on the ground in Lebanon? Meaning, how is it accommodating the bombings, the killings? These bombings are taking place in mass in broad daylight in some cases, at night in some cases. They're leveling apartment buildings, like literally leveling apartment buildings. How is the infrastructure of Lebanon, let's say the services, the public services of Lebanon, dealing with that level of chaos and damage?
You know, I'm going to give you an example. A few months ago, Israel, there was an image of the north of Israel in the dark. And the south of Lebanon had like lights. And people were saying, for the first time, this is what's happening in Israel. They are so, easily, they hate, they hate that Lebanon, has like, I don't know, like these things or whatever. And they said, the military said, oh, we're going to make sure during the first day of the war, we're going to bomb all of Lebanon's electric plants. And people here were like, our electric plants don't work. Our electric plants haven't worked for like 6 years at this point, Everything runs on generators. So with like basic services here in Lebanon, you don't need a war for them not to work. Like the people here have already found ways around it, right? So that's one side of the answer to your question. The other side is hospitals are still working, thankfully. Lebanon is receiving, some level of humanitarian aid. The airport is still functioning. You must see the images, right? Like planes flying in and out and the bombs going off, because where they're bombing is essentially next to the airport, where they're leveling these residential buildings in Beirut. Most of them are right next to the airport. People are still going to work. Actually, now traffic is worse because what has happened is that you have over 1 million people that have been displaced from the south, finding places anywhere else, right? Like all shelters, all government shelters are full. Non-official shelters are also full. All hotels are booked. In Beirut, people are in the Corniche, in the boulevards. They're sleeping on the street. They're sleeping in parks. Right now, the weather is changing. Thankfully, here in this region and here in Lebanon in particular, summer kind of lasts until like November. But now it's starting to change. Now you start to feel it, right? Like now you need to take a jacket outside at night. So it's going to get worse, right? It's going to get worse. And this is what Israel is counting on. It's not just counting data here in Lebanon, it's counting in Gaza as well, for like more people to just die off. So far, Lebanon has managed, but I think it really is because Lebanon is a country that is used to managing crisis, that is used to like, when the port explosion happened and Beirut was almost completely destroyed, just like wiped off the face of the earth, it was the people, it was the residents of Beirut and of other cities that came down. They came later, but the first day, it was the people who had. So this is kind of how it is. This is kind of how it is here in Lebanon, and I think this is something that a settler colonial state like Israel is just simply never going to understand, or the US or Germany. They are never going to understand that connection to your land, to your family, to your roots, because they don't have it. It doesn't exist. But the Lebanese do. So, like I said earlier, the situation is likely going to get worse, and is likely, I wouldn't put anything past the realm of possibility. But so far, the country is holding on because it's a country that knows how to hold on.
Explain something to the audience for me, because Lebanon is put together in a very weird way. Like, it's not, the government is set up in sectarian factions, right? How did that come about? Like, how did that organization and arrangement get created? Because it's such an odd way to organize a government, and why haven't they done anything to change it? More, I don't know, functional. It may be the word.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lebanon is born out of a French colony, right? It was a French colonial state. Before that, it was under the Ottoman Empire. Lebanon as a country, as the Republic of Lebanon, is born, I think, in 1948, the same year as the Nakba, and with a constitution drafted by the French. And it's a constitution drafted by the French that is literally meant to keep these divisions alive, right? Like,
Oh, wait, so the French set this up. Just to be clear, they set up this level of... Wow.
Said earlier about like the Lebanese people is still true, but they're also very mistrustful of each other in sectarian lines, right? Like the Christians are very they don't trust the Muslims too much, and the Muslims kind of like also don't trust between themselves too much. There's always like a bit of a divide, that's why you had civil wars here, right? You had like a very bloody civil war. That doesn't mean that people don't get along or anything like that. No, it's just like it's a is set up like that by dividing the power alongside the three main religious sects, which is the Christian Maronites, the Shiite Muslims, and the Sunni Muslims. So you have, for example, the president of the republic can only be a Christian Maronite. The speaker of parliament can only be a Shiite, and the prime minister can only be a Sunni. So this is how, like this country functions. And this is also why, when you ask me like, how are the services and stuff working, that Lebanon really relies more on their own sects, on their own, like a little where they live, their neighborhoods, their village, their towns. Whoever is the Mukhtar. The Mukhtar is like a mayor, it's like the head of these villages. And then like everything goes down from there, right? The central government, they print the money. I think they're in charge. They're supposed to be in charge of electricity. They are supposed to be in charge of running water. They're in charge, I think, of the garbage collection. And like other things, like of the army, etc. But it's not like it's never been a strong government. It's never been a government, that you can rely on, really. Like even the hospitals, they rely a lot, or they rely a lot more like on the religious leaderships, etc. Right? Like this is how it functions. So politically, this is how it's divided. This is how it's always been divided since Lebanon was founded as a republic, and it's also one of the reasons why the West, like I said, they can just pull at one of the strings. And in general, their allies are mainly among the Christian Maronites. The Christian Maronites are, closer to the West. The Sunnis are closer to the Gulf and, by proxy to the West. And the Shiites, who have been like historically kind of like left behind, have Iran and have Hezbollah. Because before Iran or Hezbollah, in reality, the Shiites had nothing. Now, this is why Hezbollah has such a large representation. And this is why also, they can be so easily made into the bad guy, into the evil, into the other, right? And especially for the West, right? Because sadly, in the West, and particularly in the United States, the understanding of foreign countries, it hardly ever exists, right? So when you have a country as complicated as Lebanon, it's just as easy as saying Hezbollah bad, Israel good.
Esteban, man, thank you for this. I know there was a bit of trouble trying to get you on, but we got you on. This is definitely what I wanted to go into. It's somewhat confusing to me, only because, like, it's one thing for a country to be united and somebody to make an offer to a country, we want you to do this, or this is the deal that we're putting on the table. It's another thing to offer a deal to a country when the military of that country is not engaged. So it's like, okay, we're going to offer you a deal. But again, the Lebanese government hasn't fired a shot at Israel at all. So you are fighting Hezbollah, but you're making a deal with the government. It just seems very bizarre in the way that it's operating. But we'll see how it goes. Esteban Carrillo, Beirut-based Ecuadorian journalist. Esteban, where can people find you, by the way?
My work mainly there in their channels, and yeah, whenever we can get together, Jamarl, is always a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
I really appreciate it. You have definitely informed me on this, and look, my heart goes out to you. Every time I see you, I always ask you, "Are you safe?" I don't say that flippantly. I actually want you to continue to be safe and healthy. Elijah Magdier, he said he was going to Lebanon in order to cover it. He's a veteran war correspondent, and he's covered these wars for years. My heart goes out to you guys, man. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. You have a good one. Bye-bye. All right. I am going to let Esteban go. And let's flip back to the main screen and do it that way. So the guest that I had planned, Daniel McAdams, he's going to come tomorrow. There was technical difficulties that you all could see with me trying to get him on, Esteban on, but we eventually got him on, and we are better informed for it. Let's see. I want to make sure that I got everybody. My mom sent me a text. Oh, what is this? Aw, thank you. Who is this? I can barely see it. The thing is so far away. Tasha Panda. Thank you, Tasha Panda. Much appreciated. Look, my job, I was up so long trying to get the speaker and everything right. And then when I figured it out this morning, I was up against the deadline of trying to get on at 7 o'clock. I really appreciate all of you joining me for this. This is going to be something I do going forward. And even when I get another radio job, I'm still going to be trying to do this. I came to DC specifically for the radio job, so I'm open to pretty much going anywhere for it. But anywhere I go, I love this idea that I still have my channel. I loved Malik as a co-host, but there are times that I wanted to do things on my own and wanted to do it my way. And this show, and hopefully even the next show that I get in regards to a radio show, allows me to do that. Once I get this nailed down and I get the mechanics nailed down, we're going to have panels. I want to have something for the election night that goes on for several hours with multiple people coming on over the course of the election. Luca Clemente. Wesley's greed will be the death of this channel. Wesley's greed? What do you mean Wesley's greed? What did Wesley do? NJIT716. Luca tells me I was short last month. My bad. That is funny. I think there's an internal conversation that's taking place. Nothing. Lefties in the United States are called commies because we want healthcare like our Canadian neighbors. We really aren't asking for much, and we're told no every time. That's, again, the wild part. Like, it's wild to me that you can have all of these other European countries that have universal health care. You have all of these countries that have free college. And when you think about both of those two things, those things are liberating. If you had a situation where any and everybody in the country could go to college regardless of where they came from, how much money they got in their pocket, think about the opportunity, A, that you're creating for those people, but also the level of productivity that you're creating for your country. Those people are going to start jobs. Those people are going to be in the industries. Those people are going to be active members of the society and, for that matter, a tax base. It is to our benefit to do that. But instead, you have people who want to make as much money as they can, so they go to a 17-year-old and say, give me $50,000 or else your life is over. Because what they're holding up in regards to your life is this idea that the college education is your gateway into a better life. Give me $50,000 or else your life is toast. Okay, that is to the benefit of some, but from the standpoint of a collective government, we as a society can make certain choices about what we want to invest in and what we want to pay money into. Social Security is a really good example of that. Medicare is a really good example of that, meaning there are things that are in the best interest of this society that we should be willing to invest in for the health and well-being of this population, and for that matter, for the productivity of this population. The mealy mouth, milquetoast, almost negligible things that they put out and then are like, we are least worse. It's insufficient. So yeah, I fully agree with you. I fully agree with you, President Jamarl. Anastasia, nothing more important than for Kamala to lose. She didn't get a single vote, and his winning would be a mandate for genocide. 20 billion more for Ukraine. Again, I make this argument all the time, and I've had these fights with other lefties who are voting for Kamala Harris. And as I point out, genocide should be a red line. Morally, ethically, it should be a red line. This idea that you are in full control over whether you give money and weapons to a particular actor. All right. And then you act as if you're completely powerless. You ignore the crimes that are taking place. You ignore the starvation. You're ignoring the extermination. You're ignoring the bombing of hospitals, the murder of journalists. You ignore all of this stuff. And even when there are negotiations, and it is clear as day that Israel doesn't necessarily want to negotiate, you even ignore that and act as if, well, Hamas doesn't want to negotiate. Hezbollah doesn't want to negotiate, when really it's Netanyahu and that fascist, racist government that doesn't want to negotiate. It is warped. And then to look at the American public and say, hey, you should give me a vote and reward me for that because Trump is going to be worse. And going beyond the context of the election is pointing out no party that is backing a genocide should be able to prosper and should be able to win. And the next time an election comes up and there's a party that is backing a genocide, if that party is the Democratic Party, I want it to be drilled down from flesh to bone that they have no chance and no capability of winning that race when they are backing a genocide, in hopes that their position is different because of so. I agree with you. 1,000% agree with you. I lived in the third world country, Barbados, 166 square miles that provides free education, free health care. Go figure. But for whatever reason, we can't do it. Guys, we have come to the end. I want to thank all of you. I'm going to call it a day. You may see me a bit later, depending upon whether I get the urge to come on and do the news. But look, I want to thank all of you for joining me. And I want to thank all of you for giving. You literally are keeping this channel going. Jamarl Thomas Show. Jamarl Thomas of the Jamarl Thomas Show. Signing off. Have a good one, all.